What's up, guys? Joe Holka here. Today is Friday, October 25th. Be sure and check out the full version of NHL Inside the Lab over at Fantasy Labs. After the preview, stick around for some additional free content as usual on today's four-game slate. And as a bonus, going to give you guys one of my favorite player prop bets of the night. Per usual, the player props bet article can be found at the Action Network. Definitely a bunch more over there, and then you can get an idea for the exact lines that I'm attacking. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Toss me a like on this video. And let me know in the comments what you think of today's four-game slate. Let's jump in. Nice little slate here to talk about. Any news and notes to get into on these four games?
Not tons of big news and notes. It looks like Winnipeg shifting the lines a little bit. Nikolai Ehlers is going to be up on their top line. And then there's not really tons else that is massively impactful news for today.
All right, we're going to start on the team ratings page per usual. We're going to start by sorting by our Corsi 4, Carolina at the top against the Sharks. Kind of interesting, I guess, just because the Sharks have been a good defensive team, but it's kind of the outlier just because of how much Carolina shoots. So what are your thoughts on a matchup where both teams shoot a lot, but both defenses actually are pretty good at defending?
Yeah, it would make me feel like that's going to see a drop off from their expected Corsis for tonight. So as you see, their Corsis expected for tonight are both lower than what they're averaging on the season. So I think that that's probably something that we'll see tonight. I'm not sure how drastic of a drop off it is, but I definitely do not think that game will be as up tempo and free flying as you've seen some of the other games involving these two teams.
Yeah, to be completely honest, this page today, like normally we have some much bigger numbers over here to work with on the Corsi 4. So nothing really standing out a ton from that perspective. We just look, there's a couple teams that we can attack. It's a pretty good spot for Colorado against Ottawa. That to me looks like probably the best spot on the slate. It is going to be interesting to see, what happens with Winnipeg. It'd be nice to kind of get Ehlers in there if especially if some of the pricing over on FanDuel hasn't changed much, which I assume it hasn't. We are going to spend a little time on FanDuel today since we had a request for that. But what are your thoughts about attacking Ottawa versus attacking Detroit?
Yeah, I think definitely makes sense to have some Colorado exposure. Nathan MacKinnon, we've talked about a little bit before the show, how this is probably the best spot for him because there's really no other competition between the big dogs, as in like Seguin and those guys. So I think that Nathan MacKinnon can definitely be someone that you play today. And then Winnipeg's been pretty solid on the year, and they definitely have some options that are strong. So I think that Winnipeg, you can take a look at them, and you can look at playing some of those guys as well.
Yeah, I don't even have to look at it. I'm just assuming that MacKinnon has their highest shot prediction on the night. I would be shocked if he doesn't. But one game we haven't talked about yet is this Vegas game. They are at home versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. Any interest in any of these Vegas guys?
Not tons of interest in that game. Both teams are relatively solid defensively. Both teams shouldn't really be too strong offensively in that game. Tonight's a weird slate. We don't really have any massive spots that are up-tempo, free-flying games. You have two of the games that have teams that take a lot of shots, but they both play defense relatively well. So I think that some of these games tonight are going to be a little bit more low-scoring than what we've been accustomed to seeing at this point in the season.
Yeah, I'm the most interested, I think, in the Colorado Avalanche and probably Winnipeg just because of the matchups for sure. But like you said, it's not a slate where anything kind of stands out on this page a ton. So let's move over to Vegas, the Vegas page. If we just look at the highest favorite of the night, it is Colorado against Ottawa at home. Not really too surprising there. And then Winnipeg on the road against Detroit. So pretty decent disparity here. I know there's always kind of an argument for not attacking the top tier on these shorter slates, but at the same time, ownership's so spread out that I'm not really too scared to go after Colorado and Winnipeg. But how do you feel about it?
Yeah, for me, I think that tonight you do want to attack the biggest favorites. We just sort of talked about the teams that are the middling teams tonight, and the implied totals are games that we don't really expect to be high scoring. You still see the Carolina San Jose game as a 6-goal total, but that's more because of what they've done on the season with scoring goals and shots. And then you see the Tampa Bay Vegas game is a little bit low scoring, and you see a 5.5 game total. So for me, I think the two best spots are very clearly Colorado and Winnipeg, and I think that attacking those spots makes a decent amount of sense.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be a situation where we get some of these Carolina guys and San Jose guys as more of one-off plays. It is noteworthy, I guess, that San Jose has been the third most shorthanded team in the league this year, but Carolina hasn't been that great on the power play so far. So not sure how much that helps us. On the other side of things, Detroit in the top 7 as well in that category. So pretty decent spot for the Winnipeg power play. But that's pretty much all I have on this page, Sean. Do you have anything else before we jump into some players?
Yeah, there's not tons that stands out between the ratings page and the Vegas page tonight. Everything seems pretty straightforward, at least from the visual perspective.
All right, let's jump over to models. Go ahead and check out that full video over at Fantasy Labs per usual. We wanted to go through the slate a little bit closer for you guys, starting on the team lines page. This is a free page that we have at Fantasy Labs, and starting with the Colorado Avalanche, they have a 3.6 implied goal total leading the slate. So it's a really good spot for them, obviously, against this Ottawa team who's really struggled. They've been giving up a ton of shots as well. But one of the guys that I think is almost a must on this slate to try and get up to at the high end is Nathan MacKinnon. So MacKinnon is a guy that he's kind of tough to play on some slates just because this Colorado team isn't normally at the higher side of the implied totals. But he's been a guy that's just been absolutely shredding. 99th percentile in shots, 99th in shots plus blocks, 99th in power play shots. A lot of these things that we're really accustomed to targeting. So it's a really good spot for Nathan MacKinnon. 8K is a lot for sure, but he's a pretty nice one-off play as well. If you don't want to pay up for some of his other line mates, definitely think he's in play on his own. He's a guy that can just make the slate for you just by himself. So definitely wanted to talk about him. But another guy that I'm really interested in at the center position is Dylan Larkin. So the Detroit team that has one of the lowest implied totals on the entire night. Definitely don't think that that's ideal, but this Winnipeg team has been beatable this year, and Larkin's the one that stands out at 5,300. He's kind of underpriced, 95th percentile in Corsi, 93rd in shots. But one of the things that Sean and I talked about on the show today was how his role is just kind of taken over that Zetterberg role from last year. And what that means is the majority of the shots that Zetterberg was accruing last year were on the power play. So that's just one thing that I think that we do need to kind of look into with Larkin. If we get a lot more usage of power play shots, those are a lot more valuable than some of the ones that we see at even strength. So for a guy at 5,300 on a slate where we're going to want some savings to kind of pay up for the McKinnons of the world, there's a couple other guys, Jonathan Marchessault, we'll talk about at the other positions, but definitely like the idea of paying down with Larkin. Another guy in that price range that I think makes a ton of sense for cash games is Eric Stahl, or Jordan Stahl. Sorry about that. I'm just mixing up Stalls, but 5,100 Jordan Stahl. Really like him. 97th percentile in Corsi. Actually leads the entire slate in that category for just 5,100. Pretty decent value there. 90th percentile in shots. So not a great floor from him so far, but he does have the upside, and it is a really good matchup for Carolina in this spot to accrue some shots. Yeah, so I'm kind of on Stahl. I don't know if I'm really that interested in a lot of these other guys. Sebastian Aho is one of those guys that's a lot better value over on FanDuel, but relatively high volume shooter, and a lot of them are coming on the power play as well, 94th percentile there. So let's move over to the winger position, and one of the guys that stands out pretty much every slate that he is in is Jonathan Marchessault. So he's basically the same price as Nathan MacKinnon, so you might have to make a decision there. But at 6,900, probably one of the top shooters on this entire slate. 99th percentile in shots, shots plus blocks, power play shots, and Corsi. So it doesn't get much better than that, guys. Jonathan Marchessault. It's a tougher matchup against this Tampa Bay team. They do have kind of a middling implied total, but another guy that I think you can use as a one-off in your stacks. So if you want to stack up one of these other games, maybe you put Marchessault in there, and you feel pretty good about his floor and the upside that he can have on his own. So definitely like Marchessault quite a bit. Not really on a ton from the Golden Knights side of things in this game, but let's just look at some of the other plays in the Tampa Bay game. Steven Stamkos at 6,400 still kind of stands out a little bit to me. He's a guy that is shooting a lot on the power play, 99th percentile there. A ton of volume here, which is nice. He hasn't scored a ton of goals, and obviously I think that that's going to switch for Stamkos before not. I definitely think that he's a really solid play at the winger position, but I feel like I talk about this guy almost every slate. But Evander Kane, 6,600, you get access to this first line for the Sharks, 99th percentile in shots, guys. He's just one of those guys that you can really count on for that floor. Even in the last game, only had one shot, but had 2 assists. So a guy that is really being owned probably where he should be relative to his peripheral stats. Definitely like him a lot. At that same price point, the guy that I think is going to be more popular is definitely Patrick Laine at 7,100. So between Laine, Marchessault, and MacKinnon, definitely prefer McKinnon than these guys, but Laine is probably number 2. I think I prefer Laine to Marchessault, just because of the shot volume, very similar. Another guy that is probably going to progress towards his goal scoring mean at some point in the near future. It is a really good matchup for Winnipeg against this Detroit team that's given up a ton of goals this year. So really prefer Laine. If you can actually stack this game up, I think, though. So if we just look over at their power play units, you could go with a guy like Kyle Connor at 5,900, Dustin Byfuglien at 57. I think the Winnipeg stack makes a ton of sense today against Detroit. I think you can stack this game up a lot easier than the Colorado side of things. So definitely on that. At the defense position, I'm really narrow today. So the guy that I'm definitely locking in to one of my main teams is going to be Dougie Hamilton. I think that his floor is pretty insane relative to his price, 99th percentile in shots over the past month. Same with his shots plus blocks and his Corsi. You just don't get those guys at 5,200. So the savings that you get with Hamilton, I think, is a must in cash games. Like, look at this floor that you get from this guy. So definitely think he's the best play on the slate, probably point per dollar today. Really like Dougie Hamilton. The interesting one to kind of look at is always Brent Burns versus Erik Karlsson, but look at the price difference we get on them now. So 7K versus 5,600. Getting Erik Karlsson in tournaments, I think, makes a lot of sense at this price point. It was a lot harder decision when Burns and him were around the same price, but now that they're not, you still get Erik Karlsson, 97th percentile in Corsi, 4th highest on the entire slate. At that price point, I definitely think that he makes some sense in tournaments. That's pretty much it for me. There's one more guy that I will talk about at kind of the value side of things at defenseman, and that's Dennis Cholowski for Detroit, 4,400. A guy that's been shooting a good amount, but at the same time, just gives you a nice floor with his block shots as well. So you don't always get that from some of these power play defensemen, but definitely think Cholowski is a good way to save salary today. And that's pretty much where I'm at, guys, with kind of the lines page. And let's jump over to props. All right, guys, if you want to see the full list of player props I'm on today, definitely check out the article over at the Action Network. But I did want to talk to you guys about Erik Karlsson. So this is a game that I think is a lot more interesting in the props market than it is in DFS today. So I want to be short on Erik Karlsson. I just think that it's a really tough matchup against this team, this Hurricanes team, that they've allowed the fewest Corsi for over the past month than any team on the slate. Second fewest shots in the entire league this year. And Karlsson had 0 shots in the last game. I think we can double down for at least one more game. So we have a shot prediction metric that has predicted only 2 shots on goal for Karlsson on Friday. So that's well below his average of 2.67 per game, which is in the 92nd percentile over the past month. So definitely think that Karlsson, while he has a lot of upside, I think that under today is a pretty decent spot to attack in the props market. That's it for today, guys. Smaller slate, but if you like my work and want to support my work, be sure and check out Fantasy Labs and the Action Network. If you want to take that a step further, subscribe to the YouTube channel and give me a follow over on Twitch if you want to check out some of my live streams throughout the week. Definitely going to try and do a good majority of that kind of content going forward as well. Let me know what you guys want to see from these daily videos over on YouTube. I'll be tweeting these out on my Twitter account as well, so give me a follow at Joe Holka. All right, see you guys out there.